Okay, so you had an activity. You were to review the learning objective in this activity, and I'm going to share the screen and we're going to look at your responses. And so I'll ask for your participation. Let me pull it up. No, that's not it. Sorry about that. Learning objective activity. Here we go. Here we go. All right. So you had two learning objectives per, yeah, four altogether, but you had two to focus on under each 1 through 4. Okay. At the top, you had an example of a poorly written learning objective and an example of a well-written learning objective. You could clearly see what a poorly written learning objective looked like. It's vague, of course, and measurable. A well-written is definitely clear and specific and measurable. Um, and then you were to decide out of the two, right, which was the appropriate or the well-written learning objective. We asked you to highlight any words that would make the learning objective clear, specific, measurable, and concise. So we're going to ask you to retrieve your document now, and we're going to look at this activity. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to ask a participant to read A for learning objective 1, and also to read B, and then we'll see what your selection was. So I'll invite someone to come on the mic now to please read learning objective 1, A, and B.
I'll read.
Thank you.
Learning objective 1A. All students will increase their ability to identify key features of informational text and clearly understand the craft and structure in order to comprehend grade level appropriate complex text. B. Students will identify key features of informational text and will review the craft and structure in order to comprehend grade level appropriate complex text.
All right, so we're going to get you to put a response in the chat box, either A or B, when I say go. And we want to see what your responses were to learning objective number 1. So go ahead now. If you believe A was the more clear and specific learning objective, then you're going to put an A. And if you believe B was, then go ahead and put a B. You can go ahead now. Okay, I'm seeing a combination, mostly A's. I see a few B's. If you chose A, I'm going to ask somebody, because you may be able to justify why you felt B, whatever you selected, you may be able to justify why you selected that choice. So if you chose A, I would like to hear from someone. What words or how did this objective appear to you to be high quality or well written?
Can you hear me?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
I just eliminated B because it said we'll identify key features, but it did not tell me what the key features were.
Okay. Thank you so much. Anyone else who chose A? How did you eliminate?
So B? I chose, this is Kalandra. I chose A because it said measurable. All students will increase. Those were keywords that stuck out. All students will increase their ability to identify the key features.
Right. And that's what the SLO is about. People ask, all the time, what's the difference between the SLO and the GBE? Well, the SLO is for all students to show growth, where the GBE may have been for your class to show growth. It could have been a goal where 80% of my students may achieve a certain goal, right? But with the SLO, it's built into where each student involved in the SLO should show some type of growth throughout the SLO process. So that's one thing definitely, that all students are involved in this SLO. And you can see the growth portion of the statement they will increase their ability. Absolutely. So the well written or the well written SLO statement, I'm sorry, would be A for that reason. Thank you so much. All right, let's look at learning objective 2. Let's have someone to read A and B for learning objective 2.
I'll read that, Mr. Evans.
Thank you.
Problems. Sixth grade students will show growth in making sense of word problems as measured by the end of the year.
They're breaking up a little bit, but I think we all heard you well enough. Thank you so much for reading. Once again, let's go ahead and place those responses in the chat box. I just want to see where your thinking is. Would it be A or B as far as the better, per se, learning objective, the one that you would approve? All right, seeing mostly B's, a few A's. All right, and if you chose B, why did you select B, and what made you cancel out A?
He identifies the assessment tool and says there'll be growth.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And also I see in there too is my sixth grade student, so that I would assume he would be speaking on all of his students that are involved in this SLO would be, his sixth grade class. So, and how it's going to be measured at the end of the year is going to be measured by the math district benchmark. And any other comments to add to learning objective 2 as to why you selected B? Why would A probably not be, or if you saw a teacher who had that learning objective written down, what would you suggest to them, or what could they do to make it, to word it a little better?
I think just simply asking, I just put make sense, is it measurable for A, because it doesn't show how they're going to measure that.
Right.
So make it measurable.
Awesome, awesome. Any other comments? All right, we'll look at, let's look at the last one. Let's look at the fourth one. We'll ask someone to come and read A and B for learning objective 4.
I'll read it. Number 4, students in my physics class will write laboratory discussions in which students utilize scientific concepts and data to explain and support laboratory results. And then B says, by the end of the spring semester, all physics students will demonstrate growth in their ability to write discussions in which students utilize scientific concepts and data to explain and support laboratory results.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll ask you again one more time, last time. A or B, please place your responses in the chat box. Awesome job. Awesome job. And as the SLO approver, the SLO evaluator, if a teacher comes to you and they don't have a strong, well-written learning objective, it's your job to coach them to be able to write a more well-written or provide those missing components that would make the learning objective high quality, that would make it measurable, right? That will make it concise and clear. So that's going to be your job. It's not your job to say, hey, it's not right, go back and fix it. No, this is more of a coaching process. The entire SCTS observation process or evaluation process, expanded adept process, is about growth. So it's not an I got you. We're here to support teachers, to help them clearly write an attainable yet rigorous learning objective. All right, so mostly B's, mostly B. So let's go back to the document, and I'm just going to ask someone to, if you chose B, why B? What made B stand out as the more well-written learning objective?
Good afternoon. This is Teresa. I thought B was very specific and clear. It indicated the time frame, which was by the end of the spring semester. It indicated who, which was all physics students. Then it indicated what it was that the students were expected to do to show mastery, and that was to demonstrate growth in their ability to write. And then the other part of that was also reflective of what the students were expected to do, and that was students utilize scientific concepts and data to explain and support.
Awesome, awesome. Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to do a little meter check right now on a scale of 1 to 5, because this is, you're going to be doing this. Some of you have already, you're well aware of this process and have been improving learning objectives for some time now. On a scale of 1 to 5, after going through work sessions 1 and 2 and having this activity, how comfortable are you with approving learning objectives for your teachers that you're going to be evaluating this year, or leading the SLO process for this year? With 5 being the highest, on a scale of 1 to 5, how comfortable are you with approving learning objectives for your educators? Awesome. For those of you who may be around a 3-ish, don't see very many, is there anything that you need support with to help you become closer to a 4 or a 5? Is there anything that we could share with you? What would you need at this time to feel more comfortable approving those learning objectives?
So I was one of the 3s. So I think for me, it's practice, just doing it, learning it, role playing maybe.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Celia, and I'm a 3 as well. This is just going into my second year in this position.
Okay.
So like Ray said, more practice, role play, maybe one-on-one conferences, PDs, what have you. Just something to get me more animated into the position.
All right. And what is your role? I'm sorry.
I'm Director of Career and Technology.
Gotcha. All right. And are we clear on the basis of the learning objective? You know that with the flexibility that was granted last year, 1 to 2 high priority standards, right? And also the components from the profile of a high school graduate. So that's a little different than, before the flexibility was given last year with COVID. So any questions on that?
I have a quick question on that.
Mhm.
So we're looking at doing school-wide focusing on math this year.
Mhm.
And so for K through 5th, I can understand pretty easily how to choose those priority standards.
Mhm.
It's for the special ed teachers.
Mhm.
Do they use grade level priority standards as well? If the students are not performing at that level, or would they, I'm just not quite sure what to how to help or work with them.
Are you asking, should special ed teachers use their standards?
They're the K through 5 priority standards as well, even though those students would be performing far below grade level.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
and also, again, the IEP, we don't want goals based off of the IEP, but we say that the IEP can influence those goals, right? So with the special ed teacher understanding the IEP makeup or the IEP for those students, they're able to use that information, right, to be able to set those goals. So with that in mind, yeah, that would be some type of collaboration or some type of, it takes some time to actually look at how that would mesh,
Okay.
with the IEP goals along with meeting those standards.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Kind of breaking up
saying-
there. I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
So where the special ed teacher would say, or the goal would be written in such a way.
I'm sorry, Sheila. You're chopping. I don't know if it's my end or what, but you're chopping up. I'm so sorry.
Okay, I'll just.
We can talk after. It sounds like you have a really good question. I don't want you going without having this question answered. So we'll work it out if I have to call you later or what. But hold on to your question. For some reason, I'm just having an issue hearing you. But we possibly can try after more people leave out. Maybe that would help out a little bit. I'm not sure, but we'll make sure we answer your question. Any other questions before we move on?
All right, so I just want to clarify with the SPED because that has been issues before. So say the child is a 4th grader, but his functional is 2nd grade.
Mhm.
She would still use the 4th grade priority standards because he's listed as a 4th grader,
Right.
not the 2nd grade standards.
Right. Because it's all
Right.
about growth, right? It's all about growth.
Correct.
So how much growth? They may not make as much growth as a traditional student or a student in general education. It's all about growth. So knowing your students, because it all goes back to teacher content knowledge of students, right? Same thing in the SCTS observation process. Teachers should know their students, right? So if teachers know their students, they should be able to accurately set those learning targets. So it doesn't matter if it's special ed or general ed. Knowing your students, using that baseline data, progress monitoring along the way, you should be able to accurately, and you'll be able to adjust mid-year. That's why that mid-year adjustment is there. But you're able to set those goals knowing your students. And in the past, that's where trending data came into place to kind of look at trends from students alike in the past, students that teachers have taught in the past. We don't necessarily say use that for the simplified SLO, but that's still a great resource to use, such as in this case, to see how students have traditionally performed in a certain area. To help you be able to set those learning targets or those learning goals. So it's all about growth. The growth for a special ed student may not be as much as a student in general ed. It's all about just showing growth over that year. So it's up to you as a school leader to understand that, to know that growth could look different in the special area realm.
Correct. Thank you.
Sure. Good questions. Anybody else? All right, Faye, I think we're ready to start back with the slides.
All right.
Awesome questions. If you have some other good questions, keep them coming. Again, we want to truly support you and want you to feel that you have all that you need to start the SLO process this year. All right. All right. So what we'll do now, we'll now get to the content for our last group session of the day. May not take us until 3. But we'll use any leftover time to answer questions and hang around for participants who may need some further support. But during this time together, we'll look at combining the SCTS 4.0 teaching standards and SLO conferences. We've talked briefly about that this morning, but we're going to show you how it actually looks in action. We're going to look at establishing evaluation teams. We want to support you and being able to establish your evaluation teams because we understand that you are one person a lot of times, especially in elementary schools and smaller elementary schools, you may be the only evaluator or the only administrator on staff at your school. So it's almost impossible, right? To do every SLO, to do every evaluation in the school. So we're going to give you some pointers and some suggestions on how to establish those evaluation teams so that you can work smarter and not harder on next year. We'll also look at an example of a combined conference. It's about an 18-minute video where an administrator has a end of the year conference with a teacher. And he's combining the SCTS teaching standards observations with the SLO, and you'll have some questions to help guide you through that video to guide your thinking around what should occur during that conference. And then lastly, Faye will come to you and we'll look at available resources to continue to help support you as a school leader in the SLO process. And at the end, we'll have Q&A and hopefully answer any remaining questions that you may have. So we get it. We get it. We truly get it, especially in a year with COVID. Man, it was crazy last year. I could only imagine. I am a former administrator. I understand what your job entails. It's busy, busy, busy. As an AP, seemed like my job on top of evaluating teachers was to put out fires. So I had to really manage my time to ensure that I was not overworking myself, to ensure that I was on schedule with my evaluations, and that I was supporting teachers as much as possible. Again, this is not an I got you. This is a growth model process that we use. And we want to assist you to be able to grow teachers. So in the next few slides, we will look at how you can pre-plan for the SLO process at your school. This slide here is simply a reminder or a review of how the SLO process connects to the SCTS 4.0 process. The year is divided into two parts, right? The preliminary cycle and the final evaluation cycle. During the preliminary cycle, the 3 bullets here show you how you can tie the SLO to the observation process. And this, like Julie mentioned earlier, would work if you are serving as the evaluator for both, right? This would be separate conferences if you have one evaluator working on the SCTS process and you have a different evaluator working on the SLO. So those would definitely be, separate conferences. But with opportunities to combine these conferences, this is how it would look for the preliminary cycle and again for the final evaluation cycle. And I'll just give you like 30 seconds just to look at this slide. Any questions on this preliminary cycle or how we tie both the SLO to the SCTS process? Any suggestions? Anything you've done creatively? Anything you've done creatively with tying both together? You may have something to share with us that you do at your school. Show of hands. How many of you have combined, who had experience or prior experience with the evaluation process? How many of you have? You just put a thumbs up in the chat box. How many of you have combined both processes? Has anyone combined both processes? Sarah, what was that experience like? Do you have any tips or pointers or suggestions for anyone that helped you be able to do both, scheduling wise? Anything to share for the good of the group?
I think really just using the SC lead makes it pretty easy to go from one to another and intertwine the two. That really, because if the teacher has all the information and the data in ahead of time, you can just kind of flow from one thing to another pretty easily.
Awesome. That is a great suggestion. Using SC lead. Awesome. All righty. All right. So planning for SLO conferences. Faye, are you able to blow that up a little bit?
What happened to my volume?
I could actually not. It's a set size on my screen on how it projects. But
Okay.
they want me to find a link to it and propagate.
Well, I could, if we can mute, we need to mute some. I can't hear. We need to mute some participants. Thank you. It's fine. I can talk through it. But this document here is called the Classroom-Based Teacher Evaluation Guidance Document, and this can be found on our effectiveness webpage. And if I can drop it in there. Let me see. I can drop it. I'm going to drop the link to it. I think I had it. Actually, it's on the landing page, but I'm still going to drop it. Classroom-Based Teacher Evaluation Guidance Document. Yeah, I'm going to drop the link right now in the chat box so you'll have it. But this is a great tool, and some people, some educators and evaluators don't even know that this tool exists. I'm always sharing this document with new principals or principals who just may need some background knowledge on how the SLO process or even the observation process, what it entails at each contract level. So on the far left of this document, you can see the different contract levels. It starts with the first year induction teacher, then it goes to your annual diagnostic assistants educators, your annual formal educators, of course your continuing contract, your comprehensive 5th year recertification year educators, and then your continuing contract and annual GBE educators. The next column is the observation portion, the SAT observation portion of the observation or evaluation piece. And it just tells you, what's needed, how many observations are needed for the first semester, how many observations are needed for the second semester or the final cycle. It gives you that detail. It tells you where the results are formative, where the results are summative, all right? The middle column, the forms to use, this section just pretty much tells you the forms that are available either on our website, mostly on our website, that will help you be able to manage the evaluation process. And then the far left column talks about the student growth piece, right? So for each contract level, this far right column shows you what the student growth piece will look like at each contract level. So this is a great document to use as a school leader, so you'll know, what you should be doing for each of your educators. There are times when we see records at the end of the year where some of the observations were not completed. And so guess what? At the end of the year, the record won't close because there will be an error message that will show saying that, the SLO was not completed or the first semester, second semester observations weren't completed. So this is a tool to use so you will know exactly what's needed for each contract level in your school, not only for the SLO, but for the observations of professional practice as well. So make sure you hang tight on to this one. Any questions about this document? All right. So again, make sure you have access to this document, because this is one that you definitely want to keep handily. You may want to print it out and have it somewhere. I know as an AP, there were, several documents and resources that I would just print out and have in a location that was easily accessible, so I could pull those out when I needed them. It may just be an evaluation folder, with just evaluation documents. That would be a smart way to have those accessible resources. All right, moving along. All right, so what I did here was just share an example of how you could build your SLO evaluation teams. And in our state of South Carolina, we have varying sizes of districts. We have large districts such as, our Richland County districts, Greenville County districts, and some other larger districts in the states, and on down to our smaller districts that may only have one high school, right? So the support that is available will be different according to your district. So when we look at a larger district and a school in a larger district, you may have a principal at that school. You may have and 2 assistant principals, right? Possibly even 3 assistant principals. And you may have the luxury of having pulling a principal designee to your evaluator team to be able to conduct these SLO observations and SLO evaluations. Also at your reach might be support staff in the form of a reading interventionist. And that's why we talked earlier how some of these roles could support the SLO process at your school. So the reading coach, the math coach, a lead teacher on a grade level, in some districts, the curriculum resource teacher, could be persons to help the teachers be able to write high quality SLOs. These also could be people that could help you understand or be able to approve SLOs in areas that you're not familiar with. Math may not be your area. Foreign language may not be your area. So you could use these individuals, these SLO coaches or SLO support staff, to help you be able to, give adequate support to teachers during the SLO process. And then, of course, you have your teachers who will be completing these SLOs. And of course, we're here to support them. This is an opportunity for teachers to see. We heard earlier, one of the questions was, how can we get teachers to see the power in the SLO? Because a lot of them see it as just something to do. We've heard that. We've heard that since I've gotten here in the office. And our goal was to change that thinking, for teachers to see value in the SLO process as an opportunity to fine tune your skills. Because I don't care if it's the SLO or just good teaching. Good teaching, teachers should be able to look at where students are and be able to use data to guide them to show growth over the course of the year, or to show growth over the course of what do you call those, a unit, or you know, throughout a certain interval of the school year. So this is just good teaching practices, being able to use data to guide instruction. So
I ain't touching nothing.
in a smaller school district, you see at the bottom of this image how it could possibly look. So let's say at a school district where there's only one administrator at the school, and that could just be you. What options do you have to get these SLOs and to get these observations, SCTS observations done? We've seen in districts where there is a district person who helps out in these efforts to, you know, come in to the schools and help the principals evaluate teachers. Also, principals, those educators who you feel strongly about as being teacher leaders. These could be educators who could support or evaluate, and again, they don't have to be SCTS certified, but we would definitely hope that you would choose someone that you feel could, you know, would be adequate for this role. But again, you may want to pull some of your teachers who may be looking at going into administration, some of your aspiring leaders, who may want this opportunity. You know, this will be a great opportunity for them. And then your coaches or support staff could look a little different, right? It may be a grade level chair that's supporting teachers. This could be tied into their TLG goal, right? This could be a content lead teacher at the school level that could step in and support. And this support could be tied to their teacher leadership goal. You may have another teacher who is aspiring to be an administrator, or aspiring to be a coach one day. This could be an opportunity for them to get that experience, right? And then, of course, you have the teachers who, you know, will be completing the SLO. Are there any other creative ways that you've established evaluation teams at your school? Any other suggestions, or any questions around what you could possibly do with an evaluation team at your school? We'll open it up for any questions now, comments or suggestions. All righty. So it is now 1:54. What we're going to do now, we're going to just take a short break. We're going to take a short break. I'm going to use the restroom, and what we'll do, it's 1:55. At 2 o'clock, we'll start back at 2 o'clock, and we'll start with this activity on establishing school-wide SLO processes. And what we'll ask you to do when you come back is just go ahead and download that slide from your resources landing page. We'll also drop the link in the chat box for this document. So we'll go ahead and take a break now, and we'll start back right at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
First time these teams met Ryan.
All right, it's 2 o'clock, and I'll talk for about 10 seconds to let others rejoin. And this next activity is going to be some work time. So we're going to give you some time to really process a lot of the content that we've covered that you've heard today, and being able to take that information and start planning out, how it's going to look for you at the school level as a school leader. There's a document. Again, we've placed the link in the chat box. If you have yet to download, please go ahead and download that document, and we're going to give you enough time to complete it. We're going to give you at least 15 to 20 minutes to work on this document, because we want you to truly think about these steps. How will you orient your teachers to the SLO process on the school level? How are you going to do this? What is this going to look like as the principal? What will you need from your district to be able to orient your teachers on the SLO process? We talked about the TLG earlier, so you need to get clarity from your district. Are we going to allow our teachers to do the TLG this year? How are you going to orient your new teachers? You're going to have teachers that are coming to you straight out of college. Again, we talked about those teachers who may not have had a traditional or normal student teaching experience. How are you going to ensure that those educators understand about the SLO process? Out of country teachers, how is that going to look? How are you going to orient your teachers? Are you going to have a staff meeting? Is it going to be one of your meetings at the beginning of school with your staff? Or are you going to do it then? How is it going to look? How will you organize your evaluation teams, knowing that what staff you have on hand? How are you going to organize your evaluation team so that you can work smarter and not harder, so that you don't have to do all the SLOs in your school, right? Looking at what supports personnel, what specialists are available on your staff roster to assist your teachers throughout the SLO process. And then I would challenge you to even think further, how could that be tied to a TLG goal, right? What established meetings? That's one thing that was brought up with the flexibility. How can we use the SLO process along with what we already have established when it comes to these school meetings, these school level meetings, such as PLCs, grade level meetings, data team meetings, those vertical and horizontal meetings to get the most out of the process. And then lastly, we really want you to be able to share this with us. What additional support would you need from your district? Or what additional support would you need from us at the State Department to successfully, and that's the key word there, to successfully, because it sounds like there are some questions out there. We have some questions out there, some myths that needed to be clarified, right? So what do you need before leaving here today to help you successfully implement the SLO process on the school level? And I'll ask again, please, if you're not talking at this time, please to mute your mics. So is there anyone having trouble accessing the document? Is everybody clear on this activity? We really want you to take some time here with this activity, because we don't want you leaving today without feeling like you have what you need to implement the SLO process at the school level. All right. So again, we've dropped the link in the chat box. Go ahead and download that document. We're going to give you around 20 minutes. We want you to have plenty of time to reflect on all of these questions. We don't want you to rush through this. So we'll give you about 20 minutes. To be safe, we'll just say 2:25. We won't leave or close the chat or I'm sorry, leave the room or anything like that. You can stay here. But we will allow you to work on this on your own. And the reason we're saying on your own is because most of you are at different schools. And then when we come back to debrief some of these questions, then we'll share out for the good of the group. And maybe you'll have some other ideas maybe to add to this document. But it's 2:04 now. Let's come back together at 2:25. I'll hop on the mic around 2:20-ish to remind you to go ahead and wrap up your thinking. So let's go ahead and take the time now to work on this document. If you have any questions, just hop on the mic. Feel free to cut off your cameras if that helps you focus a little more. It's up to you. Hi, while y'all are working, I just want to comment on, I think that's Alyssa. Hope I'm saying that correctly. On your comment, and this could be for the good of the group. If you all are unclear about your evaluation deadlines, you definitely, and we do find this out, that a lot of time you principals or school leaders aren't aware of your district adept deadlines. All right. So each year, your district sends to us their adept plan, which has your time frame that you're going to start with evaluations and when you're going to end with evaluations. Um, so you want to ensure that you are aware of those deadlines, and you may not be. It may just be an email coming from the district telling you, we need this information in by a certain time. Or there are actually dates that they provide to us that these conferences have to occur by. Or the SLA has to be completed by, along with your SCTS observations. So, if you're clear about that, then you definitely want to reach out to your district adept contact or whoever is over evaluations in your district, so that you can be clear on those dates. And you want to put those dates on your calendar to ensure that you're meeting those dates. And that is also a part of establishing your school-wide SLO process, understanding those dates. So I highly encourage you to get a copy. Those dates may not be readily available now, because we will approve those DEP plans in August. So definitely by September, middle of August, those dates will be in stone. And districts are able to adjust those dates if needed. And so they will just send us an email and we would adjust those dates. But for the most part, those dates are set in stone in August when we approve those ADEPT plans. And I'm sorry, just to elaborate, we do have several districts, especially in the charter realm, that are on a different type schedule. Some of our state schools, such as like Palmetto Unified, they're on a different schedule. So it's worked out with our department if we have to adjust dates. Again, you just want to ensure that that's communicated with your district adept person. All right, it's 2:20. Let's take about 5 more minutes on this. If you need additional time, just place your request in the chat box. Thank you. All right, about 2 more minutes. And I just want to remind you all that we are taking attendance for this training so that you can get your credit for it using when you put in your name and district in the chat box this morning and this afternoon. If you were not able to put it in this morning, but you were present, then you'll need to send Faye Colley an email, and then we'll work out what you'll need to do so that we can verify that you were here this morning. But again, that's what we're going to use for your attendance. All righty, so thank you so much. It's now 2:25, and we really wanted time for work time for you to really think through these questions so that we can answer any questions that you may have. And again, just ensure that you feel that you're ready and you have all the tools and resources you need to be able to carry out the SLO process at the school level. And one thing I'll share that, like I said, I'm a former administrator, and there's a lot of information I did not even know around SLOs and just the evaluation process in general until I came to the State Department. So a lot of the information that I'm sharing with you is information I wish that I would have had, right? So that I could have been even more effective in my role. So I'm consistently thinking about, what would have helped me to be able to, implement the SLO process at the school level. So definitely that document that I shared earlier with the evaluation guidance, like that's a document you definitely want to have at your disposal. Have access to, because you may be in question as to, man, how many observations do I have to give to this educator on a continuing summative evaluation or annual summative? So there are resources that you definitely want to ensure that you have access to after this training to be able to support you. All right, so what we'll do, we'll debrief 3 of these questions from your activity for the good of the group. All righty, so let's look at that first question, and we'll have a few participants to respond here on the mic. How will you, we want to hear, what did you put as far as how you are going to orient your teachers at your school to the SLO process? What are you going to do? How's that going to look at your school? We'd love to hear from maybe 1 or 2 participants.
I'll share. So during one of our PLC meetings, we share the process with our teachers. Our district has put together a portal where we can access all of the documents, the templates, a PowerPoint that the district has put together, and we share those resources. We go through those resources with our teachers and start the process there. And then we follow up. Our instructional coach follows up with individual meetings of teachers if needed.
Awesome. If you guys need any of our content to update your presentation this year, please feel free to reach out. We'd be more than happy to share any resources that'll help you update your presentation this year. Let's hear from another participant. What will you do? And I can call on someone, or you can volunteer. How will you at your school, as the school leader, as the principal, what are you going to do to orient your teachers this fall to the SLO process?
Rodney, I'll share. I'm Joy Rankin from Marlboro County. So we have, when we come back to school with our teachers on the 9th, we have a school PD day, and that's the day that we take some time to do what I guess I'd consider a general overview of the SLO process. We have some new staff, so we'll meet with them privately to make sure that they understand the process, and then it rolls into our PLC meetings. So we designate a week to meet with our teachers in their PLC meetings to make sure that they understand, and we give them sort of the expectations, and we provide them the timeline that is provided to us from our district, and make sure that they understand those expectations. And then we follow up a month later, and at that point we want them to at least have their preliminary ideas down, and we meet with them and make sure that we're all on the right track. So it's kind of several different moments where we meet with them to ensure they understand the process and that we've made the right decisions for their SLO.
Awesome, I like that. And there is no one way to do it. There may be several occasions where you cover, what's needed to acclimate them to the SLO process. Absolutely. There is no one right answer. Alyssa, sorry, shared that small group PLC for new teachers or teachers of new content. Absolutely. SLO workshop session during PLCs. I like it. Let's hear from one more participant because this is for others to have ideas. This is for you all. Okay. Let's see what else. What else are you going to do this year? This may be an idea that someone needs to hear. We have some new administrators this year. Let's help them out.
Yeah. Hey, Ronnie, it's Sissy. I think too the individual conferences I found as principal, that was very helpful because some people really don't like to share, especially your new teachers in a group. So just setting up, just letting them know that they can set up a time to come meet with me and we can talk through it. To give that coaching approach instead of, like you said, it's not a gotcha, and those that aren't comfortable working, in a team. So.
Right. And that just brings me to differentiated instruction. If we provide that for our students, then why not for our staff, right? We're at a time where, teacher retention, it needs to be a focus, right? Teacher retention needs to be a focus. And of course, even before COVID, we had teachers leaving the profession, even more last year, due to that circumstance. But we need to do a better job of encouraging our teachers and working with our teachers so that they feel supported enough to want to stay in this profession. We understand it's a profession where educators feel undervalued and not as important as some other professions. So what can we do? What can you do as a school leader to ensure that your teachers do feel comfortable coming to you? So that you can do things such as orient them to the SLO process so they can fully feel supported throughout this. Thank you so much. That's good. So let's look at two more. Let's look at what established meetings can you incorporate SLO support for teachers? We have a few here. Are there any other meetings or any other creative ways that you can incorporate SLO support for teachers? Let's hear any other creative ways to offer support for your teachers with the SLO.
So I'm thinking that because we had talked about doing the school-wide math for our SLO, I think I'd like to get our math instructional specialist, after the grade level teams choose those 1 to 2 priority standards, have them unpack those standards so they understand what a level 1 of that standard is, a level 2, a level 3, and a 4. So then we could also leverage that for the midterm conference as well to kind of see where kids are.
Awesome. I like it.
I think that would help our special ed as well.
Great.
Sarah,
awesome.
Sorry, Rodney. Sarah, that's what we did too at South Carolina Virtual. We noticed from our iReady data that math was an area of weakness in elementary. And so we had the teachers, that's one thing that they had not done was unpack those math standards. And that we feel like that's going to be helpful. So.
Awesome. Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Take notes. Everyone take notes. We like to share what works. Even in your schools, you have teachers that are doing things that work. Hey, share the wealth. The answer I always feel is in the building. All right. What else? What other creative ways will you incorporate support for teachers? Let's see, maybe one more. Because teachers are going to need support. If you haven't witnessed it yet, you will see.
One thing that we do is we put together a little presentation, and it's available to the teachers right before they come back for in-service, so that they can look it over and kind of get their questions together. And it's not so new when we do present it at in-service, and that allows us to support them by giving them a little bit more process time because it's so overwhelming at the beginning of the school year.
Right.
And then refer back to that at any point in time as well.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you all chiming in. Again, this is not for me. Well, it is for me because I like to hear to be able to share with other educators, but truly it's for you all to bounce ideas off each other so you can truly feel supported throughout this training. All right. This is the one here that's really going to help me, though, be able to help you further. What additional support would you need from your district or from us at the State Department to successfully implement the SLO process on the school level? Please, everyone who have a response, type that response in the chat box, and we'd like to hear from a few as well. So again, the last bullet, what additional support would you need from us at the state level or from your district? We do work with your district. So what support might you need? This will also help us as we provide support for your district. What might you need so you can successfully implement the SLO process at your school? And we'd like for you to place that response in the chat box, please, from your working document. You can copy and paste. So everyone's good? Nobody needs any other support from your district or from us at the State Department?
Hear me? This is Sheila.
Try it again, Sheila.
I was talking. I wanted to let that.
Yeah, it could be a bandwidth issue. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It just it's chopping you up every time you say something. We hear your name, and then after that, that's all. If you're able to put it in the chat box, that'll be great. Okay, this matter, but a brief presentation that provides the overview of the process will be helpful. Okay, we do have a presentation. It's more so for teachers. We have what's called the self-paced SLO teacher training, and that is going to be released. It was available on a platform called SoftChalk that we used up until last year. Back, I think it was February or March, we no longer have access to that platform. So we've moved it to Moodle, and that will go live here in the next few weeks before school starts back. So that will be some type of presentation for your teachers to go through if they need to, have that general just overview of the SLO process. Also, feel free to reach out to me directly for any information. You will have access to the the work session slides. If you guys need them, you can request for us to send the group session slides 1 and 2, and then you can take the content and mesh it or use it how you'd like for your staff at your school. All right, so if no other support is needed, that's good to know. But at any time, and I want you. So, out of all the principals in the state, we have 20-something here today. So please feel free to I'll have my information up here, my direct information up here, and you took the time out today to learn more about the SLO process. I want you to have access directly to me for any questions that you may have anytime this year. Reach out to me, and I will ensure that I'll do my best to ensure that you have what you need to carry out this process with fidelity. So that's going to be a good thing for you attending today. All right, so we're going to move on, and my colleague Faye Colley is going to come up, and she's going to take us to the last slide, and I'll come back before you this afternoon with Q&A. Again, I've enjoyed my time so far, and I'll now turn it over to Faye Colley. Faye, do I need to share my screen now, or are you okay?
I am good. I am just going to switch over to the live video just to give you an overview. What you're going to do next is watch an 18-minute video. This is a combined conference. I believe somebody shared earlier, they're already practicing combining conferences with going over the SLO. So this is one example. This gentleman on the left is the evaluator or the principal at this school. He's actually from upstate South Carolina. I believe he's with the charter school in Greenville, Mr. Mike Sinclair. So you'll be watching an 18-minute video. If you want, give yourself a quick stretch. I don't want you to miss anything. So I'll start in maybe 2 minutes. Just stretch as I pull the video and get it ready. Please take that 2 minutes to get settled to watch an 18-minute video.
You don't know. You don't know.
Okay.
Just a quick test that you could hear the volume.
Well, I'll reference the questioning matrix.
Yes.
If anybody could hear that, just respond verbally.
Yeah, we can hear
Thank
it.
you.
We can hear it, Faye.
Awesome.
All right. Well, Nancy, thanks for meeting with me again. I know that this planning time in the middle of the day is important, but I appreciate you doing that. Tell me about the lesson. I mean, no, there's some exciting things going on.
Well, I think it went pretty well. The kids seem to really enjoy the Hunger Games themed lesson. It's really one of my most favorite lessons to teach, and I think they really were able to, by using the classification codes that I had implemented for this lesson, I think they were able to master exactly what I wanted them to master there. For the most part, they could come in, look at the verb, see what the criteria was that they needed to use the verb for, and then use that in the paragraphs that they wrote about their favorite character. It did get kind of pushed. I mean, it was just really packed, so it was rushed, and we had a hard time finishing up, and some kids had to finish for homework.
Right. And, you know, that's one reason I want to talk about it before, because students love to hear each other talk, and they love the Hunger Games and movies like that. So
exactly.
That was good that way you kept the transition. Your model really kind of anchored it down where you went through. If I was talking about Ida, I would, or Katniss, I would, and you went through the same modeling what they did. And then they had to choose a different character. So I think that kind of helped anchor it in your model, where you kind of went through the whole thing. Well, I think Katniss does this, and built that in. So you got some student work here. Talk to me about why you chose these pieces of student work and what it helped you learn from that activity.
Well, you know, the classification codes are kind of interesting because I originally implemented it just for students, or thought of it just for students to be able to give feedback to each other. But really, as the students were working and I looked at the feedback they were giving each other on the first draft, I realized that, you know, it could tell me a lot about my lower levels and exactly where their thinking was kind of unraveling or coming apart. So the lower level example that I have, this student was able to determine which verb needed to be used, but then they might have gotten the classification code incorrect. And so that kind of told me a little bit about, you know, just their general language skills and their ability level that ties back, you know, to them struggling in Spanish 1. So kind of neat.
So is that that transition piece? They may not have gotten it.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then, but overall, I felt like by using the strategy, my lower levels were able to, it was a little more concrete for them to kind of hook into, and, you know, kind of help them to understand the material and to be able to use the correct verb.
So for them, it kind of made it concrete, like they could see what you were trying to teach them because it was labeled that way. Okay.
Exactly. Okay. So then my middle students, this is where I really saw the biggest growth, I guess, in my middle level performing students. They really were able to look at this and apply it to the paragraph that their classmates had written and really do a good job as far as identifying the verb and the justification for the verb usage in the paragraph. So that's where I saw the biggest shift of students, you know, moving from medium to high. So.
Okay. So you actually had, I mean, you could look at it and see their development of their skill to move them into that next bank. Okay, that's great. Let me ask you a question before you get to the high one. Did you, when you were looking at their groupings, did you find that students of similar performance were sitting or working together on this, or did you find that a high and a low were working together, or?
Well,
because they all seem to know what they were, the process. So when I was talking to students around me, I could hardly tell who was high and low by the work they were, by the way they were doing the work.
The way I have my classroom organized, I have a high performer and a low performer sitting so that they can kind of collaborate, and the higher level student can help the lower. But then when they exchange papers, they exchange with the person behind them. So I had 2 highs working together and then 2 lows working together, or medium and low.
Okay. So you had the similar student performance providing feedback to each other, so they were, so you didn't have one writing more complex.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I like the way you grouped that. I mean, that's, you know, you didn't have to come up with a whole new grouping, but you used your seating area to have multiple ways of grouping students. I think that's a real efficient way of doing it. All right, tell me about the high students. Look at, that's a lot more writing.
It is. So for the high student, generally, like you said, they're going to be a lot more communicative and expressive in their writing. Okay. They're going to try higher level or more challenging sentence structures, and just more, you know, they're going to elaborate a lot more. And so, and then the student giving the feedback really just kind of, like I said, took it and they ran with it. They just, you know, it kind of reinforced the knowledge for the higher level student. And again, by them, you know, really having to ask themselves, I guess, as they're going through this, what does this person mean? You know, and trying to kind of figure out what their partner was saying in the paragraph, and using this.
You know, I really like that, because I mean, if you're thinking about the rubric, I mean, that's really bringing it up to a different level of the thinking piece of it, because they're not just thinking about creating, now they're thinking about analysis and of someone else's work. So that's a simple activity per se, but it really hits some places on the rubric with it. Did you have to provide any different supports for certain students? I mean, I know when we met last time, we were talking about Josh and Jason and Myra. Did you have to do anything particular with them to keep them up to speed?
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but I did spend probably a solid part of the lesson just kind of in that area of the room, kind of guiding them through, you know, questioning them, asking them really specific level 1 questions. You know, what are you going to try to say? What is that? Where does that fall on the classification code chart? Is, you know, and helping them understand the difference between description or a trait and emotion. So a lot of them just kind of struggle with, you know, determining that. So kind of walking them through the thought process on how to even approach the code sheet.
So for them, it was more acquiring the skill, and the others you could push towards more analysis. Okay. So it looks like it was successful based on your student work and your informal feedback. What do you think really made that lesson successful? It could have gotten derailed in a lot of places in there, but you really kept them focused and plugging along, even though it was took more time than you thought. What do you think really helped push them through?
Well, I think there are probably 2 things. just the Hunger Games relevancy to their lives, I think was really exciting for them. They just get jazzed up, you know,
Right.
when it's something that they are familiar with, and then using their content knowledge with something that they're familiar with just kind of motivates them. So I think that all the activities that dealt with the Hunger Games were motivating, and I think that, you know, I kind of tiered the activities and went from a more basic level to a more application type activity with the paragraph, kind of guided them, you know, and I didn't just turn them loose on a really challenging activity right off the bat. And I think the codes, so I think all those different activities really led to their grasp of the content and mastery of the objective.
Okay. And so looking at the rubric, you know, which indicator do you felt like you know, kind of helped you anchor that together, just from your perspective?
I probably think activities and materials.
Okay.
Pretty strong.
I agree with that. I thought that, you know, the activity is what brought places for you to jump in with different students. You had a great model, which then carried through with their work so that they, at least the concretes, had it. But you also used some vocabulary and structures in your model that would challenge the upper group because they wanted to live up to that expectation. And so, you know, when I'm looking at the reinforcement that I was looking in this lesson, really, you know, for us to kind of talk a minute about exploring activities that would enhance parts of the lesson. And those can help us generate different strategies because, you know, you really made an application. And if we look at, on our rubric here, if we look at the activities and material, you know, I really thought you were in this upper group of 4 in those activities because it was definitely challenging. Mm-hmm. You challenged them on different levels. It definitely held their attention because it was very contemporary with the movie you chose. Right. It wasn't the same kind of Spanish and French videos I saw in the movies. And you know, then you had their reflection at the end where they used the Freyer square to kind of reflect on that. So I mean, I think you hit most of those in there, and that's what anchored it through. So, you know, kind of thinking of different things that you've taught them since then, so you know how they retain the information. Do you think it carried forward to the next lesson with it?
I do. I think that, you know, I saw students pulling out the classification code sheet just with different activities that they've worked on since that lesson. And I really feel so strongly about this that I'm going to try to do something similar to this for, you know, some of the lessons coming up that I have in the next unit. So, yes. Good.
And I think that really would get to that thinking strategies as well, rather than just going through practice in their book. This is really helping them create and analyze that. I really liked it. You know, I'd even like for you maybe to share that with some of the English teachers, especially English 1 and English 2, because that's one thing we're seeing is, as you know, English 1's preparing for EOC is them really being able to pick apart that grammar. And with our ACT prep, working with those students, we really see that most of the science questions are not as much about science as they are about reading charts and graphs and making meaning of the question. So I bet as we're going through some of those practices, helping them mark up ACT. I just as listening to you go through that. So I might send a couple people to talk to you if you want to share.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to.
So, you know, you're going to keep teaching the same group. If you were to tweak this activity or tweak your lesson, what's something that you might do to kind of make it stronger or more successful?
I guess the lesson structure and pacing, I felt like needed to be tweaked.
Okay.
And I say that because, you know, we went through the, I guess the introductory activating strategies, and it just kind of drug out a little bit longer than I thought it was going to, and time kind of got away from me. Ideally, I would have liked to have had them write the paragraph, peer edit, and then rewrite. Okay. You know, just to kind of get that feedback the same day and kind of, you know, learn from what they had done.
Right.
I felt like that would have been best. That was what I was shooting for. But, you know, it's like I said, time just got away, and, you know, like you asked me in the pre-conference, I had to kind of shift things and do the Freyer Square early.
Funny how that comes back around.
I know. You knew, didn't you?
Does that happen on Fridays?
Yes, yeah. And so, you know, I would say lesson structure and pacing was probably one of the more challenging areas for me.
Okay, so when you go in, it's not, really when you're looking at lesson structure and pacing, and I didn't choose that, and we'll talk through kind of what I thought might be in there, but on the lesson structure and pacing, one of the pieces here, you're looking at starting has a coherent beginning, middle, and end. Pacing is brisk. Sometimes that pacing is brisk. It's that differentiation piece. It's not too brisk. You gotta kind of feel that. So I challenge you to not go overboard with trying to trim it and make it more concise, but really kind of feel that group out. And your feedback was something you'd asked me to look at, and I think that's what kept everybody focused. That you had longer, more in depth from one group, so that your upper performers didn't just rush through it, put it down, so now they have downtime. They really worked through it because you were prompting them with that feedback, and then they love to hear each other talk.
Right.
They love to tell people what they think.
Absolutely.
And so that feedback kind of played into that stream and interest of our students. I was looking at questioning, and that's something that we've kind of talked about a little bit in our clusters, in our professional development. But kind of going through some of the script here. We'll get to that activity. I got a lot of notes here. In your model, you went through it, and then when you got into your questions, so what did these questions ask? And it was more of a specific description. This is what they were looking for. When you're looking at if you're changing the verb to a form of estar, think about how the meaning may change. Would it change? Yes or no? So you're asking a good prompt because you're trying to get that initial understanding to figure out where they were. But I wonder what would happen, especially with the group you're trying to challenge, if you thought about our question matrix and kind of went more towards the explain and the hows and the whys when they're asking one another. So how do you think that would look?
And now that you bring that up, I realized that I did spend a lot of time with my lower group, given, really just guiding questions to kind of get them through the process. But I did, I guess, kind of just let the upper group run, but didn't really ask them any questions. So I definitely feel like I could maybe use the question matrix and help them maybe ask each other more higher level questions. How might changing the verb impact or change the meaning of the sentence, or just staying in that lower quadrant.
Exactly, and so that's going to push that application piece as well for those students. When I was looking at it, in my notes, putting questions and things together for this conference, really looking at that questioning to help that faster student be able to process and not just label. They did a lot of writing, but then the processing was kind of labeling it, which was the purpose of your lesson. So I think your lesson was strong and upheld the goals that you had for them. But I wonder if tweaking that may have helped that group extend, kind of on your SLO, those top couple groups.
Exactly. I think that, you're right. I needed to kind of push them in a different direction and push them a little bit further. And the question matrix would certainly help them do that.
And with your feedback looking through there, your feedback was, sometimes it's hard to get high questions and high feedback on the rubric. And so you kind of, as you're going through planning your lesson, and you had those prompt questions that you used. Even as you providing instruction, if you look at that matrix and create some of those higher level, that could become your feedback for them. The feedback doesn't have to be the answer. You can give feedback in questions.
That's true.
So that may be, that may be something that you want to look at, is just kind of have some of those questions in your back pocket to pull out when you go to certain students, to kind of differentiate that way as well. Is there anything about the lesson that I haven't talked about that you would like to kind of walk through?
I don't think so. You talked about the feedback, and I was really excited to hear what you said about that. That's good.
So here's, as always, here's observation sheets that we went through. So here's your self scores, and so you can kind of look at how we combine there. We were within a point on all of them, so I feel like your understanding of the I think your understanding of the rubric is pretty solid. We're consistent on this, and I like to see that, so that you're self-evaluating. And then, when you're SLO, this would tie right back into that reflection as well. And so here's your reinforcement that we've already talked about, and your objective in questioning. to use a variety of questions to promote deeper thinking. Right. Through there. So, any questions on that?
No.
All right, good. I'll get you a copy of it, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your time and feedback. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, I'll just pull our presentation back up. And curious, who among the crowd enjoyed watching that post-conference? I know I personally enjoy watching that. If you did enjoy watching it, if you just type a quick Y in the chat box, I'm just curious how you perceived that post-conference.
Kalandra just put in the chat, they have access to this video. Isn't this one of the videos that they have access to after they become certified evaluators in the ADEPT portal? Is this one?
Well, since we already said that not all of our evaluators for SLO need to be SCTS 4.0 certified, so we shouldn't limit it to those that have access to the portal, because you'll only have access to the NIET ADEPT portal if you are SCTS 4.0 certified. So I think it doesn't hurt to share this video. They could, certainly practice or learn some things from this video. Also, for those that will be joining us, I know Charlene has signed up for our coaching conversation in the future. We'll be using this video, but looking at it from another lens. So there's nothing really to keep us from sharing this with them. I think we can go ahead and share this link.
Yeah, and they have access to it now. It's on your landing page.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that question, Kalandra. And I love to see some of your responses that you did enjoy watching that. For me, I love seeing some modeling. I love hearing so that I also know how to conduct my own post-conferences. But let's look at these questions. And I love that comment. You can tell the trust had been established between evaluator and teacher. Absolutely, Joy. That is something that we want. You're not just going to meet that teacher on the day of your pre-conference. You have to have established trust. If you are the SLO approver, of course, you're also getting to know the teacher before those official conferences. So definitely trust is something that needs to be established, whether it's a 4.0 evaluator or the SLO approver. In this case, you are watching somebody that's both functioning as the SLO approver and evaluator for SCTS 4.0. So we do have a few questions that are posted up here, and I'd like you to take a moment to kind of browse at your notes and be looking at these bullets. We'll think about responding to the question, did the school leader appear to have appropriate data to connect to the SCTS and SLO post-conference? And if yes, explain. If not, what additional data could have connected the two? So I'm just going to give you some quiet time so you can browse at your notes. If I should have been clearer with instructing that you could take down notes as you're watching. It's not an official observation, a classroom observation, but we can always take down notes. But I'll give you time to think, and then I'll call for people to share. All right, so definitely wait time is part of the SCTS 4.0 rubric. We want to do it in face-to-face setting as well as virtual setting. So for this first bullet, first question, I'm going to ask for non-volunteers. Well, I'm not going to ask. I am going to pull my sticks for non-volunteers to respond. I actually have a list of your names from our attendance today and gave you corresponding numbers. So It's okay. There's no right or wrong. It's just how do you perceive it, right? Does the school leader appear to have appropriate data? And it's a yes or no. It's expressing your own thoughts, okay? All right, number 19. Ashley Taylor, I believe I saw you are with us, that you're still with us. Ashley, please hop on the mic and share your thoughts on bullet 1. And we'll also give grace and wait time, because we do know that when our teachers are teaching virtually, some of the students may encounter technical issues and microphones. So we'll try to circle back on you, Ashley, and see if we can get you to respond to that question. Hopefully your audio is fine and you can get to share verbally. Okay, let me just pull a different stick. And we have number 2, and I'll try to say it properly. Wisilia, I know you've shared earlier already, but the sticks want you to share your thoughts on bullet number 1. Wisilia, could you hop on the mic, please?
I do apologize. I had to step away. We had some students in the building, so I'm kind of lost right now.
Oh, okay. Well, here's what we're gonna do. Wisilia, would you like a friend to help you? We'll let you read, because these things do happen, right?
Right.
So my sticks are lying today. The sticks never lie, as one of our teachers say in our videos. But Wisilia, call on one of our friends. I see their beautiful smiles right there. Their cameras are on. Call on a friend to help you to respond to this first question.
Well, her camera's not on, but I know she always has my back. Joy, can you help me, please?
How did I know you were going to call my name?
Because you know I love you.
Okay, so yes, she did appear to have appropriate data. We're on number 1, right?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure I'm correct as well. I felt like she did appear to have appropriate data. I was not taking notes, which I normally do and should have. And the reason I know that was because of the conversation between the two of them. It was not a one-sided conversation. She was able to reference the data that she had in front of her in the conversation that they were having. And I'm sorry I did not take notes. I would have done that if I'd have known I was going to be called on. But yeah, so my answer to that question would be yes. Yes, I think she did.
Yeah, no, we specifically did not instruct you to script. I'm sure many of you are like scripting away throughout the school year. So we wanted to be kind of like, let's watch this video. Let's take what we can take out from it. Okay, so don't feel like you didn't do what you were supposed to do. We didn't instruct you to do that. So don't worry about that. Was there anybody in the group that thinks that maybe there should be more data that could have been presented that might be helpful? Again, it's not a right or wrong answer. It's just, what is your opinion based on what you saw? Is there anybody in the crowd? If there is, if you would raise your hand, then we'll ask you to hop on the mic and we'll give you our wait time. I see there's a message in the chat. Yes, thank you, Joy, for being such a friend and having Wisilia's back. Okay, so nobody's hopped on, so I'm thinking y'all agree with Joy at this point. That's how it appeared to you, that there was enough data that they were connecting, looking back at the students' work from the different groups of students, the low, medium, and the high. How about the second bullet? What type of questions could have led to a more in-depth conversation about the teacher's SLO? And you can ignore that little note there about having to refer back to your connection between the SCTS rubric and SLOs. That was a few slides back Rodney presented. We don't want you to have to worry about digging into that. just wondering what kinds of questions would have led to a more in-depth conversation about the teacher's SLO. So I did hear a few questions, but I wonder, I'm not asking for you to share verbatim, what kinds of questions did you hear?
The gentleman was very he posed various reflective questions. For example, did the group consist of a low and a high student? What do you think made the lesson successful? If you were to tweak your lesson, what would you do differently to make it stronger? So those were some of the reflective questions that were posed to the teacher.
Yes, and it sounds like, thank you for that, Ms. Scott. And it sounds like those already help with the deep conversations that covered the actual observation and SLO. But I was curious, does anybody have anything to add on? If you were the principal, would you have asked something else, or that evaluator? Any other thoughts? Just giving you my wait time. All right, so we're not going to beat that question. If right now that's, you see that in that post-conference, that was the levels of questions and the types of questions led to enough conversations on the SLO. We're not going to hammer you into digging deeper into that. Yeah. But for bullet number 3,
Faye, I'm sorry, Faye. Yeah, I just want to just jump in on that second bullet right quick before we go to the final bullet. Just this morning, there was a graphic that was shown that pretty much showed the difference, or I'm sorry, the portions of the SLO components that tie to the SCTS indicators. I would just show that. Yeah, Faye, I just want this to be meaningful. Yeah. I just want to show. Let's see if I have my group session 1.
Yeah, you'll have to just project, Rodney. Yep.
Right. Yeah. I just want to show them that slide and just show kind of where we're heading at with this. Here, hold on one second. Because I really want them to understand how this works together. Here we go. All right, so this slide here, let me go to the slideshow. Hold on, here we go. I'm not sure. All right, here we go. Let's share it now. Okay. No, that's not it. From current slide. Sorry. All right. This graphic here that we showed this morning, it shows you like the SLO components and how it crosses over to the SCTS indicators. So for that particular question that we wanted you to look at here, and just let me go back to that slide. So we want you to look at how these tie together. So if you're having a more in-depth conversation about the teacher's SLO, as you're talking about these components and the relationship, those are conversations that you're going to have throughout that conference. For example, as you get into the standards and objectives and the instructional plans and talking about grouping students, you can tie that to the SLO. When it comes to student population and data, that's going to be tied to the teacher's content knowledge of the students. When it comes to the assessment piece of the actual SLO, well, you can tie that to the assessment piece and the SCTS indicators. You can go directly to the rubric and see some of those behaviors or things that you want to see with teachers and students that actually tie to the SLO. When it comes to progress monitoring, that's a portion of the SLO that teachers have to do. They have to progress monitor. Those who are coaching and supporting teachers have to also support them in that to help them to be able to progress monitor that support staff. And that ties to the academic feedback and questioning portion from the SCTS standards. When it comes to instructional strategies in the inclusive learning environment, that ties to the teaching knowledge of students, as well as present instructional content, activities, and materials, and many other instruction indicators. So all we're saying is there could be conversations held throughout this conference where you can touch on how the SLO ties into the SCTS indicators. And so that's what we really wanted you to see during that slide. So that's all, Faye. I just wanted them to just see this chart, and that was the chart that that text that you saw on the slide. That's what it was referring to, was back to this chart here. But just simply just seeing how these two tie together, that will guide your conversation, can help guide part of your conversation in the post-conference with understanding how the SLO components tie into the SCTS indicators. So that's how you combine these conferences and you know, what we say, knock out, you know, two birds with one stone.
Thanks, Rodney, for reviewing the slide you presented this morning. I hope that reviewing that at this point, after seeing a video, help you kind of have more clarity how you don't have to allocate separate, if you are already the evaluator and SLO evaluator, classroom teacher evaluator, that it showed you that all these things are tied together, okay? So then let's go to our last question or bullet. Describe the benefit of combining SCTS and SLO conferences for the school leader and the teacher. What is the benefit of that? Why would you do that? What is the one thing that you hear the most is the problem when they have to do planning or when they have to do so many things? Yes, you got it, Sheila, Calandra. We hear that all the time from our feedback. The biggest thing that they see when implementing something is time. So here we're giving you that picture. We've shown you a video. We've shown you the chart. These things are connected, and if you want to maximize your time, go for it, okay? And relevance, I love that. Hitting two birds with one stone. You all got it. All right, so without further ado, let's talk briefly about some SLO online support resources. So this one is the quality review tool, and this tool will allow the principal or the designee to assess three main components of the SLO. So those three components are content, rigor of target, and a quality of assessment. What's good about this quality review tool is that it will provide your principals or evaluators with clear guidance for reviewing and approving SLOs. Also, it will provide consistency. Well, it will help ensure the consistency of the quality of the SLOs, and also provide your educators with clear criteria for high quality SLOs. Lastly, this form serves as an assurance that all SLOs have been reviewed and approved. So we're not going to really take a long time looking at this tool or talking about this tool. This is just an overview. But just personally, when I look at this tool, I look at the questions, I kind of break it down. There's only 4 questions, but when I ask, you know, when the first question is asked, how does the priority standard and learning objective identify specific knowledge and or skills that are essential for students to attain in the course or grade? I kind of break that question down to myself first and say, does this have a priority standard and learning objective identified? And then once I know that it's there, then I break down, then how? Right? So you could also share this document to the educator so they know that this is how you're going to look at the quality of their SLO, so they're not surprised. So that's why we're saying that it provides that guidance of, you know, what educators will perceive as a clear criteria for high quality SLOs. So similarly, like question number 3, based on students' starting points, is the learning objective possible for all students to realistically attain while also representing a rigorous interval of learning? So again, I break that down to myself, like, well, is there a set goal, a learning objective? And then go over the actual SLO so that you could see how is that rigor being presented. All right, and then the last question on this, how does the evidence source or assessment measure the identified content skills of the priority standard and learning objectives? Again, I asked myself, well, is there already an assessment that's identified, right? So that this quality review tool, again, is also on the landing page that you have been accessing to get different materials. Quick question, okay? Y or N, yes or no? And I expect all of you to have responses in the chat. Is this tool or is this form required to be used by your principals or SLO evaluators? Quickly in the chat. Please type it in. Y for yes, N for no. Is this required to be used? Awesome.
Yep.
So
Mostly
you all
knows.
got it. Yes, this is an optional tool. We just want to be able to support you in your process. If your district does not want to use this, or maybe some want to use it, hey, it's up to you. What works best would be just like Joy said earlier, you have those conversations with your educators. We don't want to pile you up with paperwork. Do what you think works best for you and your educators. If this helps, please go ahead and use it. All right, so this is another form. It's the assessment checklist. This is for the evaluators to use to ensure that teachers are using a quality assessment in the SLO process. So similarly as the first form that we had an overview of, this is also not required. Again, another resource for you to choose if you want to use it or not. And in using this checklist, it's pretty much answering yes or no somewhat if it fits these different descriptions of what a research-based assessment should look like. So that is this one tool. We're not going to spend so much time so that we can get you out here as soon as possible. But again, if you have questions on this, please feel free to reach Rodney or any of us here on the training team or your regional support. Okay. All right, and yes, Rodney is hammering on that. It is good for teacher-based assessments as well. So, we don't want you to feel like you're stuck with, district-wide assessments. Teacher-based assessment, definitely this will come very handy if you're giving them the flexibility or the freedom to create their own assessments. And then we also have our SLO scoring rubric. So upon review of the student learning objective, the evaluators will be given, the evaluators will rate the SLO, and the ratings are based on the percentage of students that have met their growth goals, also based upon the rubric agreed upon at the beginning conference and mid-course conference adjustments. So I'm going to ask again, is this tool, this SLO scoring rubric, required to be used or not? Yes or no? Y or N in the chat. All right, I see your responses and it's a unanimous no. All right, so this is a trick, like a trick question, sorry. So it is a no if your district did not adopt to use this rubric.
Good.
it is a yes if your district adopted to use this rubric. And how do you know that? Again, when I responded to, I believe it was Alicia's question in the chat about, hey, are you going to, is there an SCDE timeline? And I'm like, well, there's no SCDE timeline for SLO, but through the ADEPT plan, the districts submit a proposed timeline. So in that same ADEPT plan that districts submit to us, they inform us whether they want to use the state created SLO scoring rubric, or they want to create a locally developed SLO rubric. And all we do is approve. So the important thing here is that you need to know and reach out to your ADEPT coordinator, or they may have a different title, a director of effectiveness or instruction. Ask them what was submitted and approved under the ADEPT plan for us to use for this SLO scoring rubric. So we hope that the district level, if that's not you already, will also relay in advance to the principals and the evaluators, the SLO approvers, what the district is adopting. So it would not be confusing, you know, like some teachers talk to other teachers from another district. So that transparency that was being asked earlier, you know, sometimes it's not just on our level, it has to also be on the district level. Well, it has to be transparent in that level too, so that there's clarity and teachers that are talking from different districts are not confused why, hey, my best friend is, you know, rated this much and she only needed this percentage and she was proficient, right? So letting teachers understand that you might talk to your friend from another district and you're not necessarily rated the same way, that giving them that context. All right. So Sheila, I believe that was kind of missed out on the landing page, but we do have the assessment checklist on our website. And in fact, that's a great segue, because our next section is just going over some of these resources that's not housed on the landing page, but also seeing what else we have on our website. So I'm going to shift to a live screen share so that I can show you how to get to these things. So you don't really have to memorize where to get the things that you need to get. So we'll just do that, and then we'll be wrapping up shortly. Okay, so let me just pull that. And share my screen. All right, so let's see. All right. Oh. So the web address that you really just have to remember is ed.sc.gov. Here on the upper menu, horizontal menu, see educators. When you hover, you'll have your drop down. Go to educator effectiveness. Once you're on this page, we call this these boxes feature boxes. On the rightmost column, third column, second row, you'll see this student supporting student growth. You'll see this first bullet, student learning objectives. You'll also see these resources here. So you'll have that SLO assessment checklist. That was what we had, just like a very brief overview, that is an optional tool for you to use, and all the other samples here. So you can access almost the similar files from the landing page and our website. And then, you know, I'm just gonna backtrack a little bit for some of you that might be interested in other resources that are related to evaluations. You could see that also on this effectiveness page, where you'll see the teacher evaluation resources that might be helpful to you. We're not hiding anything about the observations are here. So if teachers have questions, they're also welcome to dig into all the different forms that we have here. So that should hopefully help with the transparency that's needed, not just with the SLO, but with the whole evaluation process. So I'm going to unshare the screen, and I will, I believe it is now Rodney's time to recap.
I'm sorry, I'm on mute. All right, folks, we have maybe one more minute, but I'm just going to put our contact information on the screen as I promised. Hold on, let me make sure I'm sharing. All right, well, I'm getting it together. Thank you so much, but we're going to take any questions that you have right now, any questions that you may have about anything that we covered today during the training. I'm going to put up our contact information if I can get to it. Here's for you all to have for our office. It'll be the contact information for all the associates and the Office of Educator Effectiveness and Leadership. Here it is, development. So here's our contact information, and feel free to post any questions or put any questions that you may have in the chat box, or come on the mic so that we can answer any questions that you may have for the good of the group.
And we also do have one ask at this time. We have our link to our survey, if you could fill that out for us when you get a moment. Also, as a reminder, I've already received some emails of some people that may have missed out typing in the chat box this morning that they're here. You've heard back from me. I've let you know that I've noted your attendance from this morning. And also, just a reminder that I won't be sending your renewal certificate immediately after today. We do need to wait from the approved version of the certificate from the Office of Educator Services, but that's in the process. So we will meet that timeline of 3 to 5 business days and get you your renewal certificate. So don't worry about that. We'll make sure you get it.
All right, so since we're at 3:30, what we'll do, we're not going to hold you any longer than what we had allotted for the time today for this training. So those of you who want to hang around, please hang around. We'll answer any questions that you have. Again, as Faye just reminded you, please take time to fill out that participation. The participant feedback survey. We need that information to help, for future trainings. Again, thank you so much. We've truly enjoyed this time with you on today. We hope that the content that we covered will be beneficial and will support you in rolling out the SLO process in your schools this fall. The contact information is on the screen. My specific contact information is here on the left side at the bottom here. My number as well as email address. Julie and Faye are side by side there in the middle if you need to reach out to them. Again, we appreciate you, and those of you who are done for today, don't have any more questions, feel free to log off. Any others who have questions, we'll be here for about 15 minutes or so to continue to support you with the SLO process. Julie, you have anything to say?
No, I enjoyed it. Thanks, everybody. Great group.
All right, everybody have a great afternoon. Great rest of your day. Again, we'll be here in the main room for a few more minutes.